Good afternoon from Washington. For those of you in the US, thank you for joining us on a Sunday afternoon. And thanks to all our friends watching from the UAE around the world at this very late hour. We appreciate your patience and flexibility as the launch was rescheduled a couple times due to weather conditions in Japan. But given the historic significance of this event and all the hard work and talent that has gone into making it possible, it's important to make sure the conditions are just right before launching. Now, that moment has finally arrived. Today, if all goes well, the UAE will become the first Arab country to launch an interplanetary spacecraft. This day has been years in the making. Many of you are likely familiar with President John F. Kennedy's moonshot speech. That speech inspired the American people to invest in space exploration and ultimately land the first humans on the moon. In 2014, we announced our own moonshot initiative. Our leadership challenged Emirati scientists and engineers to build a space probe and launch it into orbit around Mars in time for our 50th anniversary. It makes me so proud to see friends and colleagues gathered here today, 6 years later, to watch that dream become reality. In just over an hour, the Emirates Mars probe, called HOPE or Al Amal in Arabic, is scheduled to lift off from Japan's Tanegashima Island. The probe will serve as Mars' first global weather satellite. It will collect data to help scientists better understand Martian atmospheric dynamics and climate cycles. Today, we will be joined by an impressive lineup of leaders and experts from the UAE and the US space sectors, including NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine and Mohammed Al Ahbabi, Director General of the UAE Space Agency. They will help us understand the Emirates Mars Mission and what it represents for the broader world. After hearing from our distinguished guests, we'll conclude today's event by watching the spacecraft launch to begin its 7-month journey towards Mars. For the Emirates, this is not just about reaching a new planet. Today's mission is proof that engagement and knowledge sharing open a new range of possibilities for the entire region. Our American partners, US academia in particular, have been crucial in helping us get to this point. Over the past 6 years, Emirati scientists have established close relationships with NASA and top American universities and have laid the groundwork for a dynamic space exploration industry in the UAE. Beyond scientific progress, the program supports the UAE's broader vision for the region. It is in line with our future-oriented, optimistic outlook. Our mission to Mars defies the region's recent path of conflict, and instead, it creates hope and opportunity for our people and our neighbors. And with that in mind, allow me to introduce Mr. Talal Al-Qaisi, Advisor for Strategic Projects at the UAE Space Agency, who will now join and help me guide today's discussion. Talal will also be keeping our eye on the live feed of the launch, which you can see on your screen. He will provide us with status updates as we approach the scheduled launch time.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. It's good to be back with you. I spent 9 years in DC, so it feels like I'm home. And it's great to be sharing this historic moment with you and the US audience. It's been a long journey, about 6 years of hard work culminating in this moment. And there's been many hurdles, obviously, technical, schedule, and also the unplanned logistical challenge when it came to the pandemic and trying to get the spacecraft to where it is today in Japan earlier than expected. So we had enough reserve in the schedule, thankfully, to target the beginning of the launch window, which was last on the 15th. And unfortunately, because of weather, we had to delay twice. This is our third attempt. So as they say, third time's a charm, better safe than sorry and better late than never. So hopefully, fingers crossed, if everything goes to plan, we'll see launch today in just under an hour. So much has to go right for this to work. So the launch vehicle has millions of parts, and it's basically a controlled explosion that's being maneuvered in a way to help us escape the Earth's gravity well and reach orbit. And in order for that to take place, we need to ensure that the weather and everything else is optimal for that condition. Now, so to kick us off, with the great lineup that we have in the lead up to launch, I'd like to invite the Director General of the UAE Space Agency, His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Al Ahbabi, who's in Tanegashima Island, and awaiting the launch there live. Dr. Ahbabi?
Hi, good morning. You hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Your Excellency and distinguished guests, I think it's afternoon and our time, it's around 6 in the morning in Tanegashima Space Center in Japan. And this is where we will launch our Emirates Mars mission. Before I start, I would like to thank you, Your Excellency, for your continuous support for UAE Space Program. And also thank you so much for the great work you are doing for UAE. I would like also to thank His Excellency Administrator Jim Bridenstine for his support and joining us, I think, for this event, and also our colleagues and friends and in US. It's a great moment of proud. We were wishing for some folks to be with us, but we understand, the difficulties and challenges. However, thank you so much for the encouragement and the support that we have received from our colleagues and friends, especially from the States. Probably Your Excellency and your guests, this is a historic moment for UAE. Emirates Mars Mission, it's an inspiring project. We are using this project to inspire, to educate, to train our young people, not just only in UAE, but across our region. Through this project, we engage, we network, we made great partnership locally, regionally, and internationally, especially with space agencies, academia, and industry. And we are proud of our partnership with NASA. In fact, we have met His Excellency Administrator when he was in Congress. Then I remember, his, encouraging words for our space program. I was explaining to him what we try to do in this part of the region. And he was very excited at that time. And he said, go for it, continue. Then today, I think it's a great moment to meet again at this occasion. He's leading NASA, and we are trying to send a mission to Mars. As you know, Your Excellency and your guests, this is a project that we try to use to inspire the young people and also to provide a good image of our part of the world. As you know, UAE is trying its best to expand tolerance, advanced technology, and try to set a model for the region. And this project actually is in line with that. Of course, as you know, our space sector is continuing to grow. Today, United Arab Emirates considered to have the largest space sector in the region in the language of numbers. We have 10 satellites in orbit, 8 satellites in projects. Actually, we are launching another 2 more satellites this year in September and October, in addition to the EMM. Of course, as you know, United Arab Emirates, actually from this part of the world, 2 years ago, we launched our homemade satellites, KhalifaSat. And also in 2019, UAE launched first Arab astronaut to go to the International Space Station. We have finished our regulatory framework. We issued our national space policy, strategy, and forward-looking space law that we are engaged with NASA. When we drafted that law, it's aligned with the trend in space community led by NASA. We also focus on education, and UAE has become a hub for space education. We have 5 research centers and 3 national universities providing space education. And also we are very active internationally. We signed more than 30 cooperation agreements, and we will continue to do so because our visionary leaderships, their ambitions is very high. And I think with the support from them, the support from our people, great colleagues and friends, we will achieve our goals. In fact, the more we work together, we will do much better. In fact, and we can go further and faster. We are very grateful to the cooperation with NASA. NASA were part of this project and different roles, coming from TDRS and also from the advisory role, encouragement, from Deep Space Network, and also to our colleagues in Colorado University at Boulder. We had a great time to engage, to learn, to educate our young people. Today we have more confidence that we can do more. So thank you so much, and I appreciate this opportunity to talk to you guys. And as you can imagine, now we are almost less than 1 hour to launch. It's very tight, but I'm sure you will enjoy the launch. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. So if I could also invite the Honorable Jim Bridenstine, the NASA Administrator, to share a few remarks.
Absolutely, Talal, and what an honor it is to be with you. You and Dr. Al Ahbabi have been such great friends for such a long period of time. As Dr. Al Ahbabi said, going back long before I was the NASA administrator, even when I was in the House of Representatives, and you guys came to me and you said, hey, look, we have this big ambition. We just started a new space agency as the United Arab Emirates, and we're in fact gonna go to Mars. And I remember thinking, wow, that's a stretch. And you gave me the timeline. And I remember thinking that this is going to be a very, very difficult challenge. And I don't know that at the time I fully believed that we would be in this moment right now. So I just want to say to start, congratulations. It has been, I know, not always easy. There's always challenges. This is space flight. But what an amazing job the United Arab Emirates has done putting together this mission and getting to this point. And of course, as has already been said, Dr. Al Ahbabi already said, you know, we've already seen the United Arab Emirates launch its own domestically produced satellite that is providing remote sensing and imagery on the Earth to understand our changing environment. CalifaSat, which of course has been a great contributor to our understanding of our own planet. And now after that first domestically produced Earth science satellite, the very next mission is we're going to go, of course, all the way to Mars, which is stunning and impressive. But even since then, you know, you've already had your first astronaut on the International Space Station. You've got plans for more astronauts on the International Space Station. The United States of America is very, very excited about having another partner in human space flight. And of course, our big project is to go to the moon. So I think this is a great moment, not just for the United Arab Emirates, but for the United States of America. And in fact, for all of the international partners that are involved in exploring space and sharing information. All of us can do more when we work together, and the United Arab Emirates is a shining example of what can be done when we do in fact work together. So we're grateful for the partnership. We look forward to the launch, knocking on wood. And just so you know, Talal, I've heard you talk about, you know, this is the third attempt because of weather. Look, we all understand this. This is not new to anybody involved in space flight. At this point, the #1 highest priority is mission success. Don't take any risks that you don't need to take, and I know I don't need to tell you that. But what an amazing day. Congratulations. And certainly I'm open to answering any questions or having a dialogue.
Thank you so much, sir. I really appreciate it. So I'll pass it on to the ambassador if there are any questions, and then I've got a few of my own, but please, Your Excellency.
No, go ahead, Talal.
Yeah, so one thing I'm curious about, and maybe it'll be good for our audience to know, is since we both have missions during this launch window to Mars, and in spite of the pandemic that the world is going through, both have names that are very fitting for the occasion: perseverance and hope. And that's, you know, two of the qualities we're trying to inspire and induce. So can you talk a little bit about the challenges you had to overcome in light of this unforeseeable situation that we're undertaking?
Absolutely, and these challenges are still ongoing. I know both of our nations have been working very hard. A lot of us working remotely, a lot of us you know, wearing the personal protective equipment and doing the social distancing and dividing up labor in a way where we don't have too many people working on the spacecraft at any one time. And yet both of our nations believe that this is a mission, whether it's the Mars Perseverance mission or the Mars Hope mission. All of us believe that this is critical for our nations to inspire the next generation, to provide hope and demonstrate perseverance. The naming of these two, you know, these two robots, if you will, I think is absolutely perfect. And And certainly, I think what we're trying to do here is give people want hope. And this mission, I think, is a perfect example of that.
And do you feel that they are going to be complementary in nature in terms of the science that we're hoping to derive? And can you touch on that quite a little bit as well?
Absolutely. So when we think about the HOPE mission, first of all, this is not a mission that is a tech demonstration. This is a very serious mission that is going to give us a lot of data and information on how we might one day, together even, explore Mars with humans. What we're going to do is we're going to understand the weather effects. And for the first time, the HOPE mission is not just an orbiter that's going to Mars. It's going to orbit the equator of Mars, and it's going to give us very specific weather data as it relates to the carbon dioxide atmosphere of Mars. So this is, it cannot be understated how important it is to not just get the science and data, but also to prepare for eventual human missions, which I know the United Arab Emirates is interested in, the United States of America is interested in. We're both moving forward in that direction. So absolutely. And of course, on the Perseverance side, this is the first ever, we're going to cache samples to bring back to Earth samples from Mars, which is very exciting in itself. We're going to attempt to fly a helicopter for the first time on Mars as well. And as the HOPE mission is characterizing and understanding the weather and the carbon dioxide and how it escapes into space, which has made Mars largely uninhabitable, although historically it has been very habitable, although we don't know that life ever existed there. We need to go find out. But while you're looking at the carbon dioxide and the weather, we're actually going to be working on a mission to change carbon dioxide on the surface of Mars into oxygen for life support. So I do think that these two missions are going to provide lots of data and information that's going to really inform how we one day go to Mars with humans.
Thank you. And, I want to take advantage of the fact that you were a Congress member before, and I just want to ask you from that perspective, how do you see the UAE's role from a space diplomacy standpoint globally right now?
Oh, yes. Wonderful question. Space is one of those areas that unites people. In the House of Representatives and in the Senate and in American politics, there's sometimes, no surprise here, there's sometimes divisions. But when it comes to space exploration, it unites people. Republicans and Democrats alike come together and say, we need to explore space. We need to get the science and the data. They say we need to make discoveries and we need to explore. And it doesn't just bring together parties within the United States, it brings together nations of the world in a very unique way. I really believe space is an amazing tool of diplomacy. The relationship between Russia and the United States, it's not a secret that it is very strained here terrestrially. But here in November, just a few months, we're going to celebrate 20 years of living and working together in space on the International Space Station. That's an amazing accomplishment. And that goes back to 1975. 1975, we had the Apollo Soyuz project, where we had Russians and Americans working together in space for the first time, then the Shuttle Mir project, and now the International Space Station project. So look, when it comes to exploration and discovery, it transcends boundaries and it enables people to work together in ways that oftentimes is not easy. It keeps open a channel of communication. So I really do believe it is an amazing tool of diplomacy for all nations.
Well, Mr. Administrator, I really appreciate your time. I'll pause there to see if the ambassador has any questions before we move on. Excellency?
Go ahead.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much, Mr. Administrator, and hopefully you launch successfully as well with Perseverance. We're looking forward to having somewhat a viewing party over here in this part of the world to promote your launch as well. So good luck.
Thank you so much. Congratulations and good luck on the launch today.
Thank you, sir. So with that, if I can call on Mr. Mike Gold to join us as well. And Mike is a good friend of mine from even back in his days prior to being the Associate Administrator for International Relations at NASA. Mike, you know, in addition to His Excellency Ambassador Otaiba, we have Ambassador Ellen Stofan, our ambassador to the UN, listening in. And I know you did a lot of work at your time, both at NASA and in industry, in the UN, and interacted quite a bit with our team dealing over there at the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. Can you tell us a little bit about your impressions of the UAE in those engagements and overall your impressions of the UAE with our current mission to Mars?
So Talal, let me apologize in advance. This is where I offend all of the engineers. While the technical challenges that we face are certainly important, I believe that the policy, the legal frameworks are of equal importance to the technology. And while I'm extremely excited about the HOPE launch, and again, congratulations on everything that you and the team have done, one of the launches that I was most excited about was the launch of the United Arab Emirates into the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. You sit next to us due to alphabetical order. The UAE and the United States are literally next to each other, which is only appropriate given that we are so close together on policy. And new space agencies like yours, the emerging space agencies, it's so important that we come together with the traditional space agencies to create a safe, peaceful, and prosperous world for all of us. And by tackling those policy issues, that's how we do so. And UAE has been an incredible partner, not only to us, but the entire world. It's what we're trying to accomplish with the Artemis Accords, looking at transparency, safety, interoperability, the public release of scientific data. It's all so important, and UAE has been a tremendous partner already there, and we look forward to continuing that policy leadership together into the future.
Yeah, so can you maybe talk a little bit about the role of policy formulation when it comes to these very future-oriented types of concepts like space mining and commercial space flight, for instance, commercial tourism? We have George Whitesides here a little bit later as well. But you know, your impression of the UAE's current policy and law and the way we've addressed some of those topics.
Yeah, so it's so terrific to have all of these new space agencies coming on to the international scene, not only because of the new, again, substantive projects that we get and the new technologies, because the diversity of views and innovation that we get on policy. UAE has been extremely forward-leaning with new policies and regulations that we in the US are able to learn from. And we all bring such a diverse array of different ideas. It benefits all of us. As the administrator said, we're all stronger together. And with the UAE stepping into that role and other emerging countries, we're going to get better policies. And it's important that we tackle these issues now to prevent conflict in the future. I believe that we can do better as we go to space than we have here on Earth, but dealing with these policy issues up front are a big part of that. I want to compliment UAE on recognizing that and contributing greatly to the international conversations that are occurring.
Thank you, Mike. And lastly, can you tell us, since you've had interactions with the UAE that date back at least a decade, if not more, from the first time you met with, even prior to the space agency, the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center, and your interactions early on, till what we are going to hopefully witness here in just under 33 minutes today. What is your impression overall of the UAE space program and the Mars mission in particular?
Amazing, simply amazing, Talal. And unfortunately, that I'm getting old, it does go back to more than a decade. I remember walking into what was then the Emirates Institute of Advanced Science and Technology, now the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center, shortly after this program was announced, and sitting down with Sarah Al-Amiri, talking about the incredible task that you have in front of you. Well, you know, it's terrific what all the new emerging space agencies are doing. The UAE is unique that you don't just talk, you act. You fund programs, you enact these capabilities. And it's been so amazing to see how far you have come in such a short time. And that's why I have great hope that not only are you going to achieve your dreams with the robotic missions, but that you will put people on Mars in the not too distant future. I can't help but note, Talal, there's a picture of your beautiful daughter, Mira, next to you. And my hope is that with the information and technology that we'll garner via these robotic missions, that your daughter, my son, and children from all throughout the world will one day be standing on Mars together to create that peaceful and prosperous future for all of us.
Thank you, Mike. I literally asked her right before this, and she said yes, she's all game to go to Mars. So really appreciate it. And I know Ambassador Al Otaiba's son is also very, very much into space. So hopefully they'll have company. Thank you again, Mike. I really appreciate your time, really appreciate your kind words. And with that, and with your permission, Your Excellency, I think what I'd like to do is queue up one of your recent episodes from your Podbridge podcast, where you had Her Excellency Sarah Amiri, the Minister of State for Advanced Technology and Deputy Project Manager and Science Lead on the Emirates Mars Mission, where she discussed how she feels as the launch approaches.
What I've been working on since late 2013 will soon sit on top of a rocket awaiting for launch. So a collection of mixed feelings, from being terrified to being excited to apprehensive to, I just can't explain the multitude of emotions at the moment, especially reflecting on the large chunk that this has taken from our life. So everyone that has been on the mission, including our partners, this has been our every living, breathing moment. It has been part of our household, part of our families, part of our workplaces constantly. And I think Ellen knows this, you get to a point in the mission where there's no such thing as day and night and work days and work weeks and so on. And it's just, I think it's interesting in retrospect to see if this is going to create a void after launch, especially if the spacecraft's not here and it's on its journey. And let's see what the journey has in store for us.
That's some great perspective, and just so everyone knows, Her Excellency Sarah Amiri is also going to be our incoming chairperson at the UAE Space Agency starting August 1st. So we're all very excited to welcome her on board in the new chapter of the agency's evolution. So I'd like to also now take this opportunity to welcome Mr. Jeffrey Manber, the CEO of NanoRacks, to share some of his thoughts about what attracted him to open NanoRacks in Abu Dhabi, and also the interactions that we've had as the UAE and NanoRacks as a company.
Talal, thank you. It's great to be here, but you never want to follow Jim Bridenstine and Mike Gold and speaking about the eloquence of Mission and everybody else, both in Japan and everywhere else. But it's an honor to be here today from Washington, D.C. And I thought I would touch on 2 points. The first is, as you know, NanoRacks has chosen to open in the UAE, and specifically in Abu Dhabi. And we've done so because we share 2 visions with you. The first is the belief that the superpowers, the space exploration should no longer be limited to 2 or 3 superpowers. And it's amazing how we're seeing a democratization of space. So we could not be more thrilled to join with you on this space journey. And there are other reasons why we want to be in the UAE. I can touch on those if you want.
Yeah, I was hoping to hear maybe what attracted you to the UAE and what your current focus is in the UAE as well. Are you looking at a specific niche within the space industry that you're looking to tackle as a company?
Well, we also share another vision that space is so important for exciting the students of today. And at NanoRacks, we are working with a lot of universities around the world. In the UAE, we're working with all sorts of your universities. They've been wonderful. We've sent a lot of experiments to the International Space Station. We've deployed several satellites. And what we're focusing on in the UAE is how do we use the environment of space to create new products and new microbes, new bacteria, new products that we can use to help our lives here on the earth. So we see a lot of what we're doing in the UAE as not only helping on space services like satellite deployments, and not only helping on education, but also starting something that's really revolutionary with the UAE, and how do we set up in-space research centers, and how do we use the harsh environment of space to better our lives on Earth.
And so a lot of that is, I think, got to do with agriculture and food security as well. So can you touch on that for a second too?
Yes, we've been working for the past year with a lot of organizations in the UAE, both in space, in the universities, and food security, of how we can take researchers who have been working for years on how do you do space farming, and how can we use that to green the deserts. And that's something that I'm very passionate about. And we've been working with lots of organizations in the UAE, and we should be able to announce something more formally in the next few months. But that's the type of vision that is so common in the UAE. People in the UAE said to me, Jeff, we share your own vision on space. Do something a little more dramatic. Move the needle a little bit more. We in the UAE are committed to this for 100 years. What can you do to share with us? And we spent months working on space farming, and when we proposed that to people in the UAE, they were like, "That's wonderful. Let's figure out how we can do it together." So we're proud to be in the UAE. We're in the UAE because you have a vision that's at least 100 years in the making, and we want to be along for the ride to help. And we also believe that this is the time when UAE can emerge as a space center for not only the Middle East, but for Africa. And we're delighted of your acceptance of NanoRacks, and we're delighted to be here, and we're just looking forward to this launch.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Jeffrey. Really appreciate you joining us today. And we hope to see you here in Abu Dhabi once things are back to a level of normalcy, hopefully.
That's right.
So thank you very much for joining us.
So hope.
Thank you. I'd like to now turn to two young engineers who actually worked on the project and have spent quite some time in Colorado with our partners, our knowledge partners in the University of Colorado in Boulder. Both Hiyam Al-Balushi, who is actually in Japan right now, as you can see, she's sideways on the screen, and she's wearing the Emirates Mars Mission, there you go, and Hoor Al-Mazmi, who's here with us in Abu Dhabi. Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences on the project, maybe starting with you, Hiyam?
Greetings, everyone. So my name is Hiyam Al-Balushi. I am an assembly integration and testing engineer at the UAE Space Agency. And I had the pleasure to work on the Emirates Mars probe. And it was my first ever space mission. I just would like to touch on the point that space is a collaborative work. The collaboration between the UAE Space Agency and the United Arab Emirates, and the United States, as also Japan, really enabled this mission to happen. And then knowledge transfer that I got from this mission is just amazing. The purpose of this is to inspire the young generation, to pursue a STEM-oriented field, which are the building blocks for economic diversification, which is, the main objective here. So thank you so much. I know, it's a mess here, but I'm very excited for the launch.
Thank you, Hiyam, and good luck over there. Hoor, can you tell us a little bit about what you did on the mission and your experience?
Yeah, so my name is Hoor Al-Mazmi. I'm a space science engineer at the UAE Space Agency, and I'm part of the Emirates Mars Mission science team. I worked on the science closure of the mission, part of the science closure. And I also got to work in Colorado. I got to do my master's while working. So I got to experience American culture again after my undergrad experience. So that was nice. And it was a great way for me to connect with scientists from all over the world through this experience. And I wouldn't have been able to do this without the Emirates Mars Mission.
And can you tell us a little bit real quick about the instruments on the Mars mission and the type of science we're looking to acquire?
Yeah, so we're hoping to be able to look at the connection between the upper atmosphere and the lower atmosphere by looking at the planet in a new way, where we can look at it globally. We can get a global image that can give us a day to night cycle of the variations of the constituents on Mars. And that's a great way for scientists to be able to compare what goes on over different seasons and over different times of the day on Mars.
Great. Well, really appreciate you ladies being with us. Mr. Ambassador, unless you have anything, I would be able to move on to our next part of the program, since we are a little bit behind on schedule, but I'd like to give you the opportunity to maybe speak to the ladies or say anything if you so please.
Talal, I have a quick question for the lady scientists. I'm actually smiling because I'm so proud of seeing them both and witnessing that what they've put into work is about to become reality. If it was up to them, what would they do next? What would be the next project for the UAE space program after putting Hazza al-Mansouri into the space station and after launching a probe to Mars? What would be the next logical step in our journey?
I mean, for me, because our motto is the impossible is possible and we can do anything, I think a Mars sample return would be great. I know that NASA is already planning that, but that's something that we should also aim for, because that would teach us a lot about Mars and it would teach us a lot about the universe and how it formed. And yeah, it would be amazing. But thank you for that question, Mr. Ambassador. And thank you for having us.
Pleasure. Thank you for doing everything you've done to make this history for the UAE. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. I'd like to now turn to a very good friend of the UAE, Mr. George Whitesides, who was the CEO of Virgin Galactic until a few days ago, when he now has the coolest name coolest title in the space industry, the Chief Space Officer of Virgin Galactic, to share his experience in dealing with the UAE through the partnership Virgin Galactic and Mubadala Investment Company have. George?
Hi, Talal, and thank you for having us with you and everyone in the UAE space effort. It's such a great honor to be with you all and such an exciting moment. Yes, so our relationship with UAE has been going on for now over a decade, when we started a partnership around Virgin Galactic and its aspirations. And I will say that over the course of that partnership, I've been lucky enough to get to know yourself and many other members of the UAE space leadership team. And it's just been such an incredible pleasure and honestly a joy to watch the growth of the UAE space sector as you pursue a very rational and logical series of steps to increase capacity within the country and to do real things, as the administrator and Mike Gold said, to really do a very well-planned agenda of real space activity. Our relationship on the Virgin Galactic side, relates to potential growth of our business someday to the UAE, and there has been a spaceport or potential spaceport location identified in the UAE, which has all the right parameters for a potential operation, as well as now the new space legal framework that the UAE has created, which enables those activities. And so that's what I mean about putting the blocks in place to really pursue a quite diverse range of activities, from science as today to to human spaceflight and educational capacity building. It's just been a joy to watch the growth, and to be a small part of that. That story has been terrific, and we're grateful to you, Talal, for the role you play as a diplomat within the space community to connect us all to the different things the UAE is working on.
Thank you, George. And if you don't mind, maybe touch on a little bit the general ecosystem that we're trying to develop, and how you feel Virgin Galactic might be able to add and contribute to it through, like you said, some of the activities that you may be able to bring to the table, hopefully in the not too distant future.
I think what people are increasingly recognizing is the important role of space in a variety of ways to improve human experience here on Earth. And that has to start, I think, with education, which of course has been a really important part of the Mars mission that is launching today. But another important part of that is business and commerce, right? And building sustainable enterprises that are profitable and that entail growth and bring jobs and new technologies to different parts of the world. And that's certainly what we've been talking about through our work with Mubadala and Abar and Strata. different enterprises within the UAE ecosystem to connect with those capacities and to build up an enterprise that could bring not just people into space from the United Arab Emirates, but also research missions, so that the UAE becomes a new kind of center for space research, where people will be bringing their experiments to, potentially bringing their experiments to the UAE to launch into space from the UAE soil. And to me, that's a very exciting vision. It's one that I think is very possible, and it's certainly something that we've been working hard on with your partnership over the course of the past years.
Great. Well, really appreciate you being with us, George. Please give our best to Sir Richard Branson, Chamath, and the rest of the team and the Virgin family, and hope to see you in Abu Dhabi here, as you were a frequent guest, hopefully when things return to a level of normalcy. Thank you for being with us today.
Sounds great. Thank you, Talal.
Great. So another important aspect, as was touched on a couple of times in our space program, is the positive impact it has on people in the UAE, on young people in the UAE and the region. Here's a perspective from Hazza Al-Mansouri, who last year became the first astronaut to reach the space from the UAE and the first Arab astronaut to visit the ISS, from a conversation he had with Ambassador Al Otaiba a couple of months ago.
Pursue your passion. Always you have to work and pursue a dream that you are passionate about. Work to achieve that. To let you know, to be an astronaut is not a career like you will pursue in university. You have to accomplish a lot of things before you achieve that goal. So you have to work on yourself, and despite, you shouldn't be like a pilot to be astronaut. You can be engineer, scientist, doctor, teacher. Even the teachers went to space. So it is the passion they drove them to pursue their dream. So this is my advice for them. Follow your passion, work hard to achieve them, and believe me, if you are from UAE, you will have a lot of opportunities in future.
That's something I spend a lot of time trying to explain to people, not just for being an astronaut, but being part of the space industry at large. I think you can be, it's a multidisciplinary sector, and I'm living proof that you don't have to be a scientist or an engineer to be part of this incredible sector. I'd like to invite Dr. Ellen Stofan and Mr. Steve Clemens to help us recap in the lead to the moment we've all been waiting for, and maybe have a discussion with His Excellency Ambassador Al Otaiba on what they've just heard and what we're about to see.
Well, Talal, thank you so much, and it's great to be with everyone here. What a great day. Listen, I pulled a book off my shelf today, and it's not a first edition copy, but it is Jules Verne's book, From Earth to the Moon. The original copy of From the Earth to the Moon, I know we're talking about Mars today, was published in 1870, so 150 years ago. And when you think back to that aspiration, those dreams, and all of the things that came by way in our society, American society, but now the UAE is doing this. And I just want to open up to Ellen and have a conversation with Ambassador Otaiba as well about what an aspiration like that entails and how it transforms the education system, how it transforms industry, how it transforms what a government thinks it can do. Ellen, you went to Mars with the Curiosity Mars rover, and you're the most Mars-obsessed human being I know. So what are your thoughts on how this is so transformational and the UAE's contributions today?
You know, for me, the ambassador touched on it in the beginning. This, you know, this whole program, and I've known Talal for now quite a number of years, and really watched this probe come to life. And it reminds me of another country 50 some years ago now, that in 8.5 years made it from basically no space agency at all to sending people to the moon. And that spirit of Apollo is what I have really watched happening in the UAE. And they will get the same results that we got from Apollo, inspiring a generation to go out and do the impossible. When you consider the people like Jeff Bezos, for example, who were inspired by Apollo, that's what's going to be happening in the UAE. Every school child is going to be watching Hope and saying, I want to be that first person to step on Mars.
Ellen, I love the first time that I talked to you about the Mars rover Curiosity, that it was a she. and that she was up there. I just wanted to note that because I think it's important. But Ambassador Otaiba, I mean, take your political and diplomatic hat off for a moment. I mean, you're of the UAE. How do you feel in your guts this is changing your country?
So everybody touched on this differently from all the perspectives that we've heard. Mike touched upon the importance of the policy and the regulation side of this. Ellen touched on what this means. We heard from Hiam and Hur about from the people who actually built this program, literally, and is about to see it into action. But what I thought is really important that captures all of this is to a young Emirati who is watching this. If he or she is awake at this time in Abu Dhabi or Dubai and watching for the first time a spaceship carrying a probe to Mars, they're going to grow up believing everything is possible, or they're going to grow up believing that there is indeed hope. And I think it's really, really important to see that, because we see so much conflict and tension and disagreement. And I'm not going to put my political hat back on, but everything is polarized. We're trying to find things that are not polarized. We're trying to find things that bring us together. And I think this is one of those issues where let's focus on collaboration and cooperation. If we're going to focus on finding a cure for Corona or the next pandemic, we're going to have to work together. If we're going to find a fix for climate change, we're going to have to work together. And what this does is gives you ammunition and the spirit to find this sense of collaboration, because some of these problems, frankly, are beyond any one country or any one institution to fix. People, especially young people, need to grow up thinking and understanding the power of working together to accomplish greater things. And I think this is exactly what this program does.
Thank you for that. Ellen, let me ask you, as you project ahead, I mean, right now we have the United Arab Emirates sending a probe to Mars. We've seen George Whitesides from Virgin Galactic, and we've got other private companies out there as well involved. So this is becoming, as Yousef just said, Ambassador Otaiba, excuse me, very collaborative. What does the future of this look like? Because I remember the NASA was it. It was the big cheese. It was sending, Space Lab up and doing everything. But now there are a lot of players. Is that a strengthening of the process? Is that going to elevate science? Or do you suspect that there are problems in that as well?
No, I think this is an incredibly exciting time. As a scientist, to me, the more I see more countries getting involved, the more science I see being produced. And the world shares this science. We do it together. As the ambassador said, it takes every smart person in every country around the world to step up to a huge challenge like sending humans to Mars. No one country can do it alone. It's too expensive for one thing, but the technological challenges are tough. We all need to work together. And that's what I've seen happen with the HOPE mission. I've seen the UAE doing amazing things, but I've seen the international community welcoming them, supporting them, and today nervously cheering them on.
And just before I jump back to the ambassador, I want to ask you another question, because I was so inspired to see the two women in the space program just commenting, because I think that's a big achievement. But we look at it as a big achievement right now, is that is more the exception than the rule. You're a big champion of inclusion in our science programs, in our space programs. You run the National Air and Space Museum, which is a point of aspiration in history. How are we doing on all sides of this equation of bringing women and bringing every color and stripe of person into these aspirations in space?
We still have a long way to go. It's getting better, but we have a long way to go. But when I visited the UAE, what really inspired me in the times I've been there, I've been to primary schools, I've been to universities, and seeing especially the young women engineering students, and they have such a role model in someone like Sarah Amiri and Hur, who we just heard from. I mean, seeing women in these prominent positions is what it takes to inspire a girl to say, I want to go do that someday. So this is incredibly important, what we're seeing here today.
I want to ask Ambassador Otaiba this question, a little bit facetiously, but not really. You have so much space stuff going on. You have an astronaut that you have said just gone up to the International Space Station. We have the probe today. You have ongoing programs. When are you going to build an air and space museum out on Saadiyat Island?
I think that's the natural next step, but that's easy. Building something on Earth.
When you ask what the next step is, I thought that's the next step.
We can do that tomorrow. It takes a lot less time to build a museum on Earth than it is to send a probe to Mars.
Well, tell us, I mean, as you think about it, and you're now the diplomat on Zoom, the diplomat engaged in this, and this is an important national moment for your country. I guess my question is, what do you want your countrymen to know and feel about this moment and what the nation is contributing? Not everyone is online. You're going to have to, you know, Talal will help you bottle it up, create a mug and a bumper sticker, but this is a moment that you've got to capture. So what is the bumper sticker that matters right now as you express this to your countrymen and women?
I think one of the coolest things about the launch that we're going to see in about 8 minutes is the fact that we predetermined when we want to do this. We set a goal, we set a target, we said we want to do this on the year we turn 50. And can we please take a moment to just recognize that it's really cool to do this in the span of a 50-year lifespan of a country. A lot of countries have been around for much longer, have not been able to pull this off, but we did it because there was a vision and then the resources dedicated to accomplish that vision. So I want every young, old Emirati to understand that when a nation puts its mind to something, it is possible to achieve that vision if you can put the plan and the resources in place. So I really want to recognize not just that we ended up going to Mars, that 6 years ago we decided we want to do this, we put a plan together, and then we accomplished that plan together.
Well, Ellen Stofan of the National Air and Space Museum, Ambassador Yousef Al Otaiba, thank you for your comments and thoughts today. Congratulations. Talal, over to you.
Thank you so much, Steve. And just to add, you know, I think the vision is something that's going to be continued. I think there's the stated goal of Mars 2117, which is a 100-year vision, a 100-year plan to have the first habitable settlement on Mars by that year. And obviously, we're not going to do this on our own. This is going to be a collaborative effort between different countries, industry as well. And so we're hopeful that this is the trajectory we're headed towards. And this mission is an incremental step in that direction. So I'm hearing go for launch on every message that I have so far. So everything seems to be okay. Let me tell you a little bit about what we're going to see after launch, just so everyone's on the same page. So about 1 minute into the launch, the rocket will be about 10 miles high and endure what we call max Q, which is where it goes through the maximum dynamic pressure at stage where the launch vehicle endures kind of the most stress and structural load while going through the maximum acceleration it's going to get to while trying to defy gravity and reach that 8 kilometer per second speed that it needs to get to achieve orbit. And just under 2 minutes after launch, we'll have separation of the solid rocket boosters. And then 3 minutes into the launch, the launch vehicle will be traveling at 1.5 kilometers per second and reach about 100 kilometers in altitude, which is known as the Kármán line, and where what many countries define as the end of civil airspace and the beginning of space. And then at 4 minutes, the launch vehicle will be traveling at around 5,000 miles per hour, and we should have payload fairing separation, and then be traveling at around Mach 10. And then fast forward 11 minutes and a half, we'll, and a few more steps obviously in between, we'll reach low Earth orbit, which is a key milestone for the launch phase of the mission. After that, it'll go through several different maneuvers, deploying the solar panels, trying to orient itself to receive energy, and then about an hour, probably 106 minutes after launch, we'd get the first signal back to the ground station at the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center in Dubai. So I think with that, what we can do is maybe shift to the live stream for the launch, and we've got about 2 minutes and 46 seconds to go and counting. Ambassador, do you want to say anything before we come back and close at once we reach orbit, hopefully?
No, I want to watch this with the same level of excitement as everybody else.
Great. And so maybe while we're waiting for these final 2 minutes, I'll take you through a little bit of what the spacecraft will have to go through in its mission afterwards. So After it reaches orbit and after we get the first signal, we are going to then have a few more days of trying to get to the right type of orbit before we're able to do a trans-Mars injection and travel for about 493.5 million kilometers over a 7-month period, at which point in February of 2021, the spacecraft will have to do another critical maneuver in trying to slow itself down with propulsion to be captured by the Martian orbit. After which point, it'll have to then, in a month or so after that, orient into the science orbit, which is going to be a very unique orbit that's going to allow the 3 instruments that we have on board to perform its science mission and send back the data, which we will be sharing freely with the international science community. So we're about 1 minute and 17 seconds from launch. T minus 50 seconds. Thirty seconds to go. Sky's looking clear, weather looking good. We see the ground station in Dubai. That's Amran Sharaf, the director, the project director. 10. Okay, so I think the countdown clock is not in sync with what we have from the ground. So we'll wait to get an update from Japan. So countdown beginning at any moment again. And we have liftoff. So far, so good. All systems looking well. Everything looking nominal so far, everything going well according to plan.
انفصال محركات الدفع الجانبية.
And so we have booster separation. All looking nominal so far. The launch vehicle is traveling at 1.5 kilometers per second as we speak. So far, everything's looking great, and I think what we could do now is potentially, if the ambassador agrees, we can close the webinar and point you to the live stream for the rest of the feed through signal acquisition, hopefully an hour from now. But Ambassador Otaiba, if you wanted to proceed with the closing remarks.
So first, let me say congratulations to everyone on the Mars mission team. Everybody who has been part of the space program, you've all been part of making history that just took place in front of our own eyes. Thank you for everything you've done to make this possible. Years of hard work and dedication have paid off in a big way. Thanks to the mission team efforts, the UAE's first spacecraft, which 6 years ago was just a concept, just an idea, is now flying into space, well on its way to another planet. This is a huge accomplishment, but it's just the beginning. As our guests have highlighted, the Hope probe will now travel for 7 months before entering Mars orbit early next year, in time for the UAE's 50th anniversary. This is truly a historic moment for our young country, and I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. And I wish I can explain to you how proud I feel right now. It's hard to put the words together, but honestly, watching that take off, knowing how hard it was, and knowing how challenging it was, witnessing that success made me feel immense pride. I want to thank again everybody in the space program, and I think every Emirati on the face of the planet should go around feeling proud of what his country has managed to accomplish today. Thank you everybody for joining us. Thanks to all our partners who made today possible. And thank you for being in this moment with us today.